The following presentation is brought to you by kmmedia.pro. Please visit kmmedia.pro for more information. Now stay right where you are as we present. Welcome to Positive Talk Radio, evolving ideas, one conversation at a time. Great guests, dynamic stories and interviews, plus new thoughts on a wide range of topics and concepts. I hope that you'll hang with me, Kevin McDonald, my friends, and of course, you. As together we work to understand why we are all here and what we can do to make our world a better place for all of us. To be happy, be kind, and live in peace together. Yep, that's Positive Talk Radio.
Audio.
I should have turned that off.
There we go. Perfect.
I have been looking forward to this interview for a while because John is, everybody that I talk to that knows you says, oh, he's a kick. You'll really get you'll really have a good time with him. And so I'm looking forward to it. By the way, John Cole is with us. He's an artist. He also works with Allyson Roberts. I believe you're going to be a speaker on Behind the Power, right?
Oh, I absolutely am, and I'm extremely excited to be able to speak, Kevin. Excuse me. I was fortunate enough to attend the event, her first event last year down in Atlanta, Georgia, and she asked me if I would participate this year. And having, had that experience of watching others and the stories that they were telling, it was a great opportunity for me to tell my story, and I jumped at it. So yeah, I'll be doing that TED Talk-like speech, and yep. I'm looking forward to it.
You know what's fun is that you were if you look at your history, you were in the Coast Guard for 35 years, which is a really long. By the way, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And then you retired from the Coast Guard, and then it was like, now what? Which we all go through that. I'm of that age of retirement as well, and we all tend to go through, what are we going to do with ourselves for the rest of our lives? Because I don't feel dead yet, and I may be retired, but I'm not old yet, and got other stuff to do. Did that happen to you?
Boy, I tell you, did that happen to me? Yes, it did. It absolutely did. 35 years is a very, very long time, obviously, to work for any company, right? And really the military is a company. And when you look at 35 years now, I joined when I was 19. So when I retired, roughly 2/3 of my entire life was spent in the military, right? So walking away from that and then asking that question, what am I going to do with the rest of my life, was a very big challenge for me. As a matter of fact, it was the struggles that I had after retiring that directed me towards Allyson.
And what kind of struggles were those?
Well, the big struggle for me was how was I going to continue to have that responsibility? Because my speech, let me back up for a second. My speech when I talk in Atlanta is going to be about codependency and the issues that I've struggled with over the years. Now, codependency, I think, predominantly when you think codependency, you think about folks that are involved with other people that might have drug issues or alcohol problems. But for me, codependency never started like that. Codependency for me was something that evolved over time from when I was a child. And one of the symptoms of that are things like self-worth, things like, I evaluate myself based on the things that I do as opposed to valuing myself as a person. So when you work for an organization like the Coast Guard, where, and nothing against this, but the entire system is based on what you're able to produce, right? You do the right things, you're promoted, you follow the rules, you don't get kicked out, you stay in for another year, you might get promoted a rank, right? And you continue on with your career till eventually, like in my case, it just was time to go. So when I stepped away from the Coast Guard, my first thought was, well, how am I going to continue to be worthy? How am I going to continue to provide value to anyone? Okay. And that immediately put me into this frantic state, this panic mode. And the first thing I did was I jumped on a website to start looking for jobs. And I ended up taking a job with the government in the same location I had just retired from as a civilian. And the first day I set foot there, I immediately regretted the decision. And it wasn't the people, because I had just walked away from those very same people. So it wasn't them, right? It's the same people. But what had happened is I found that it just wasn't the same environment. It wasn't the same feeling. And I had realized that I'd really made a big mistake doing that. And of course, I had committed. And then that's when the real pain started in my head, because it's like, is this all there is? There's got to be more than this, Kevin.
It's amazing that you say that, John. First of all, got to ask you, what was your rank when you retired?
I retired as an 05, a commander.
So you were a commander.
I was, but I started off as a seaman recruit. So I started off enlisted, and then about halfway through, I was fortunate enough to transition over to the officer corps.
Everybody that I talk to, virtually, and in my life, whether it's on the radio or otherwise, at one point in time, they say to themselves, is this all there is? And why am I really here?
Right.
And because there's a big void that we don't know what that's all about. And you had left, you were used to having, you remind me very much of my own father, who was an executive with Nordstrom for 40 years. And so he was Mr. McDonald. And so when he would go into he had a whole region. And so at the end, he started as a one store manager and worked his way up. But he was that guy that everybody made sure that the displays were nice and that they looked nice and everything was right. And it was Mr. McDonald. And then he retired at 59. And nobody called him Mr. McDonald anymore. He lost his complete sense of self-worth. He was, because everything was tied to the job. And I suspect that was your issue too.
It was exactly the same, Kevin. You become, the thing is you become part of that greater whole. And with an organization like the Coast Guard specifically, which is primarily it's a search and rescue and law enforcement organization is what it is, right? And their whole mission isn't like the other armed forces where it's national defense. It is homeland security. So the primary function is the safety of life at sea, and then also protecting human life, protecting animals. I do, or however you want to phrase that, right? Because I still feel I'm part of that, and I probably always will feel that. But the whole mission is a very positive, very, very I can't even think of the right word there. It's a very uplifting mission. And when you're part of something like that, you can't help but assume part of that identity.
Exactly.
And then of course, when you step away from it, whether or not it's voluntary or not, part of you kind of goes with it, and like I said, it leaves you struggling for answers like, well, now what?
Well, and when you retired, you were not yet 60. So you were, So you were, by by my standards, you were a very young man when you retired, and you had lots and lots of things that you still wanted to do and still wanted to give. But to reinvent yourself at, I don't know, 53, 54, whatever it was, to reinvent yourself, that's hard to do.
It's hard to do, but it's not impossible. But I will say, at the Behind the Power event specifically, I am going to be hosting a breakout session specifically to talk about that challenge. So there's a little bit of a plug for that there. And I think that's important because, like you mentioned, there's a lot of folks, whether or not they're there yet, eventually we're all going to stop doing whatever it is that we've been doing for a while. And even if you're, transiting between jobs or whatever, eventually you're just going to stop. And then that question will come up. But I think one of the big mistakes that I made was jumping into something without really thinking about it. And the second thing that I found that was extremely valuable was Allyson or a coach, because, and I think Michelle, during her interview a couple of days ago, she brought up this whole point or this whole perspective of blind spots. We don't always see what's going on with ourselves because we tend to put these blinders on because we think, well, hey, I need a job, or I need to go this direction, or I need to take care of my family because I think I don't have enough money, which, by the way, was the whole reason I jumped for the other job. My first thought was, yeah, I'm going to get a retirement check, but man, how am I going to pay the mortgage? How am I going to pay the garbage bill? Blah, blah, blah. Right. When the fact of the matter was, well, I'm not getting that extra money. There's still enough there to cover those bills.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I still have the house. Otherwise, I wouldn't be broadcasting tonight. Right. I still have the internet connection. I'm still paying my Xfinity bill. Right. So, but it was really Allyson was the one that really kind of put me on track there. Right. And I think the whole within that first 30 days of me working with her, the big button items for me, she helped see those blind spots so I could course correct. So I would say probably within 45 days, I ended up quitting that government job. And although, you know, saying no, thank you, I don't know if you've ever quit a job before, Kevin.
Oh, yes.
I mean, but it's not an easy experience, especially, if you walk in with good faith and you're obligating yourself, say, I'm going to do this job. And then you have to walk in and say, well, geez, it's only been 45 days, but I'm going to have to quit. Right. But there's a little fear involved, but it's the best thing for you. Right. And then the other thing was, what about me? So what did I do with her help? I signed up for college. So right now in the middle, actually I'm more towards the tail end of earning my bachelor's degree in graphic design, which is something I always wanted to do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And by the
So
way, Carrie says your small group is here with you, John.
Carrie has been working with Allyson. Carrie is an amazing person. She has been very, very supportive for all of us. She herself has been really that spiritual side of Allyson's personalized science. So Allyson's focuses a lot on how the brain works, the cognitive behavioral part, and then Carrie adds in with the spiritual side of it to really give us that full package.
So, Carrie, have you signed up to be a guest on the show yet? I'll wait.
Oh, you'll love Carrie. Carrie has probably one of the most charming personalities of anybody you're ever going to meet. She's just wonderful to talk to.
Well, I have to tell you, there isn't a soul that I have met that is associated with, oh, good. She sure has good. So there isn't a soul that I've met that works with Allyson that isn't a dynamic human being and is really July 25th. That's cool, and is working. You're all working for the betterment of each other, the betterment of the planet. You trust each other. You've got a sense of teamwork, a sense of camaraderie, and that you are all one and you're all working together for the same thing, which is the betterment of each of you and the betterment of mankind, which is what I'm trying to do as well, which is why I'm so pleased that Allyson has invited me to be a small part of what you guys are doing, because it really is cool, and I appreciate it no end. I really do.
Well, I mean, if anything, we appreciate what you're doing for us because, we are just normal people that are trying to improve ourselves because, every little bit helps. I mean, the world right now is in this really crazy, funky thing that's going on right now. And, in my opinion, um, while everything seems crazy, we control ourselves. We control how we think, we control how we act, and we control the decisions. Every single thing that goes on in our life, Kevin, we decide how we want to think about that and how we want to react to that.
Yep.
So for us to sit back and blame somebody else for our decisions and how we're going to act, we really can't do that as humans. What we have to do is we have to take that personal accountability, that as Allyson puts it, that radical personal responsibility, because really it's up to us. So if we want a better world, if we want a better neighborhood, if we want a better Facebook page, TikTok, right? We've got to make that decision. Nobody else is going to do that for us, right? So if we want to remain positive, right? You do positive talk radio, Kevin. That's what you do. And if I want to be positive, then I do the best I can by getting on your program, or I work with Allyson, or I speak it behind the power. Because like Christy had said in the previous episode, if I can help just one person, if I can have one person come up and say, John, thank you, that meant something to me, I learned something, that will have a ripple effect.
Well, I have to tell you, everybody that I've talked to, then I've mentioned your name specifically, they all have got a wonderful, wonderful opinion of you because of the man that you are and how kind and loving and caring that you are with the entire group. And they honestly, John, they think the world of you. They really do. So, and as well they should, because you're working like me. And quite frankly, I got to tell you, John, there aren't a whole lot of guys that are doing what we are doing. But we're trying to make a difference. We're trying to make a difference. And being guys like you, guys like me, we can help other men realize that there is a better way.
Yeah, and it's crazy because, you know, my decision to join uh, the program, it's kind of an interesting experience, right? Because like Christy, I ended up doing the painless pivots to power, and it was because I was on break between jobs. So it wasn't like I was going out of my way to find a coach. But something inside me was to that point where I knew I needed something, right? So I needed something. I didn't know what it was. I didn't think it was, therapy or counseling or anything like that. It was something a little bit deeper than that. There was something missing, right? Something deep in my soul that said, look, John, in order for you to make a change, you're going to have to do something drastic. And for me, that's drastic because I'm a guy, Kevin. I'm a guy. I don't ask for help, right? We don't do that.
No, don't go to the doctor. We don't ask for help. We don't ask for directions. Nope, none of that.
No, we don't do that. However, by me taking that seven, it was a 7-day program at the time. By the time that seventh day come, I had already, because I'm an analytical person, I'm empirical. That's what I did with the Coast Guard for 35 years. Is you look at the way things operate. Everything is sequential, and then there's a result. And really, what I saw working with Allyson just for that 7 days is that it all made sense. And when things make sense, especially as a male, you're like, well, if it makes sense, then why can't I apply that to myself? And if I can apply it to myself and have it work for the better, then there's value there for me. Really the fringe benefit of that is the value to me then bleeds over into everybody else because it can't help but not. When you become a nicer person, Kevin, guess what's going to happen to the people around you?
One of two things: either they're going to go away,
Mhm.
or they're going to appreciate you for the man that you are, and it's going to be, and they will grow with you.
Yep.
And
And either way, you're going to get the right result.
exactly.
Yeah.
And sadly, there are people that it's kind of an energetic vibrational thing. They operate at a different level, and they just can't handle when somebody's trying to be positive and is happy and is trying to make things better for the world. They don't get it, and that's fine. They will. It's going to take time, and it's going to someday that they'll get it. But for the guys who can get it, they're it changes everything about them. It changes their family. It
Mhm.
changes their relationship with their kids. It
Right.
changes the relationship with everybody, and you can really make a difference. And so I'm really impressed with you. I'm really impressed, and I'm glad to know you because you are really first of all, you were in the Coast Guard for 35 years, so you're a man's man, and being a man's man and still being um kind and gentle and amazing, as Christy says, such
Thank you.
such a he is such a guy and an amazing soul. Um, it has to make you proud.
Well, it makes me feel good. I think, you know, looking back at, my 20-year-old self, my 30-year-old self, and then looking forward, fast forward all the way today, my 57, I think I am now. I don't know. I had a birthday back in June. I don't even remember.
Just
Um,
look at your license, you'll get it.
yeah, that's exactly. Pull my license out. Um, I mean, and I'm sure you feel the same way. The older you get, the more you like yourself because I mean, you get to look back on the experiences, right? You get to, at least I hope. I mean, that's the way I look at my life is, my 20-year-old self, the kid had some problems. Let's just be honest. The kid had some problems, right? 30-year-old self still didn't get it. 40-year-old self starting to get it, but still wasn't quite there. But as time goes on, especially again, I hate to keep harping on Allyson, but man, she is awesome, right? When she brings this stuff to your attention and you really start to take a look at really what makes you you by looking at the various traumas throughout the year. And I'll just go on record, and Christy kind of mentioned this as well, that definition of trauma, things that change your worldview or yourself, right? So I didn't come from an abusive family. I didn't come from a broken family. I didn't come from an alcoholic family. Me walking into the program, I'm like, I came from a normal family. What the heck was traumatic about my life? Right. But then I think back and it's like, well, I got beat up on the school bus. I was the short kid, right?
Yep.
I never got picked for sports. We grew up poor. I mean, Christmas gifts were from the Salvation Army. We went to the food bank, right? So, and my father was a World War II veteran. My grandfather wasn't. My father was. So my father was 20 years older than my mother when they got married. So there was a huge age gap there.
Oh,
So
wow.
he was old school, and he saw combat. He was a tail gunner that flew missions over Indonesia right at the tail end in 1945. So he came in with this specific mindset, his own worldview, which as a child, you can't help but absorb that as a child, right? You end up learning and thinking a certain way. And all of that feeds into who we become because we don't know any better, right? So all that builds up as various forms of trauma. So when you look at somebody like myself in a program like this and you sit down and you're like, well, what do I have to heal? Well, believe it or not, there's a heck of a lot more under the surface than you think. You could think you're coming from this perfect environment, but really when you start to think about it logically, empirically, write things down, take some notes, and you start to look at yourself when you're younger and the things that you've gone through, you'll begin to realize that there's a lot more trauma there than you think. And those are the things that you need to heal.
Indeed, indeed. And I'm the older I get, or excuse me, the more seasoned I am,
Wow.
the more I realize that I don't know that I have ever met a family that was not in some manner or form or some way dysfunctional in some way. And it affected everybody in my family. My sister, my brother, and I, at one time, we sat down to talk, and we were just talked about our growing up years. You would have thought that we grew up in three different households,
I believe it.
because
I believe it.
my oldest sister, her experience of those years was horrific. My brother's was drug induced, and but we all grew up. It's like we grew up in a different place, and so we all got different experiences and different traumas associated. And it was the same house, the same two parents. We had our entire growing up years, but it was, but there was trauma associated with it,
Right.
and it affected all of us in a myriad of ways throughout our entire lives. Some of us to this day. I'm through it and stuff, and I understand it. But and I say that, but I haven't sat in front of Allyson lately, so because I had her on the show one time. And I have this problem. I tend to invite people into my world and say, come on in, we'll do a show and we'll have some fun and stuff like that. Well, a lot of times they have a different agenda than I do. And so I mentioned to Allyson, and this was on the air, and I said, why is it that these people keep turning up badly for me? And she said, because you lack self-worth.
Mm.
Uh I guess I'm gonna have to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
And Michelle says, and you're right, she will kick your backside because she doesn't fool around, but she does it in a loving way, and I just love that about her.
Yep.
And she cares.
Oh, she cares. She absolutely does. She will bend over backwards to help you see those areas that you can help yourself with. You know what I mean? I mean, and that's the interesting thing about her program, her unapologetic power program, is she's really not doing anything for you, right?
No.
she's not doing anything for me. What she's doing is she's providing me with the tools, with the training, and with the compassion and support so that I can work my own trauma at my own pace so that I can improve myself. And that's important. That's important because it's easy for me to tell you how to do something, but it's deeper meaning for you if you can solve that on your own using the tools that you have. It's kind of like going to IKEA. I mean, I could have the IKEA tech build it for me, or I could build it myself. Now, granted, I'll be more frustrated because my guess is that half the parts will be missing, right?
Exactly.
But the point is, by the time I'm done, not only do I know how to build this thing, but I also have that satisfaction that I did it myself. So that does then make me feel proud that I was able to solve this problem. And it's because that she provided those tools for me.
Well, and what's that old saying that you can give a man a fish or you can teach him to fish?
Mhm.
And what she does is she gives you the tools to be able to learn how to fish so that you can feed yourself.
Right.
Because
Right.
ultimately, that's what you have to do anyway.
Exactly, exactly. And actually, Carrie, when she had put the little text up earlier about the groups, and Christy might have mentioned it as well. We do have these groups that are subcomponents of our program, where it's just these small groups of us that meet, and that atmosphere itself allows us to bring up little issues that we might have that we can then discuss in the small group. And it's not necessarily coaching like she would provide, but it gives us that venue to be able to discuss these problems, right? The sympathetic ear. You know, well, what's interesting, and I'm going to back up just a second here. That 35-year military career. One of the things that I also lost, Kevin, was community.
Hmm.
Now granted, with any military life, you end up moving around every 3 to 4 years, right? And I'll just go on record. And this is another. And we haven't really talked about codependency at all, and I don't know if we'll have time for that. But one of the reasons that, or one of the symptoms of codependency, or one of the supporting elements of that, is stability. I've moved 26 times over my life, which averages out to be about once every 2 years.
Holy Moses, that's a
Right?
lot.
That's a lot of addresses, right? So with that military life, I lost that sense of community, and I lost any established friendships, because even the friendships themselves tended to only last 2 to 3 years tops. And then because people move, people take on new careers, or, new areas in the military or whatever. So this program also offers up that sense of community, which is really, really important to people, because we're social animals. It doesn't matter if I think I'm an introvert, or, dude, I want to be a hermit, I want to live in solitary. We still need to have that.
It's vital.
Need to have that. You know.
It's yeah, it's absolutely vital. And there's another category of people that really, really need this kind of interaction and support from folks. And that is, if you are of a certain age and you've gotten divorced,
Mhm.
and the last thing you want to do is to get remarried, but all your friends are married, and so you end up feeling like the third wheel.
Mm.
And so you tend to pull yourself back. And then you end up staying home alone and not interacting with other people. And that's not good for you either. And so this type of group, this type of community, if you will, is really vital for your growth and your continued development, because that's why we're here. We're not here to shut down and watch CNN 16 hours a day.
Oh, gee, let's not even talk about the news. Yeah, that's a whole different issue. That's a whole different show right there, Kevin.
It is.
Yeah.
Whole different channel, quite frankly.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and I think it's what's also really cool about it is that people of a certain age, right? So I'm in my 50s. We've got some folks in the group that are older than myself, but we also have folks that are as young as 19.
Cool.
And the beauty of that, and I think this is something also, and of course, it's predominantly female, but there is a small spattering of men. Which, by the way, if there are men watching, I highly encourage you to consider something like this, because it's really important, right? This isn't about male, female. It's not about gender. It's not about age. This has nothing to do with any of that, right? Positivity has nothing to do with that, right? It's about being better. And you can be better at 65 and you can be better at 16. It's all about being a better person, right? It doesn't matter. So
I really wish that I was 19 and had the smarts to be able to be in a group like this. Can you imagine what would have the growth that you can experience between 19 and 40 or 50 or 60 is nothing short of amazing.
yeah, 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 19. Yeah, I remember 19.
I I remember parts of it, but that was a long time ago. But and and there's a lot of trauma that goes on throughout our lives and stuff, but it really is important. And by the way, we've touched on it, but we haven't really talked about it much. And that was when you retired, and then you got the you went back to work, but it was different because you were no longer a ranking member, as it were. You were now just a civilian, and they look at them differently, I would
Mm,
imagine.
yeah.
And so you followed your passion, which I highly advocate everyone. If you can follow it, if you can do it at all, any way you can, follow your passion, follow your heart, and you'll live longer, you'll live happier, you'll be and you'll contribute to society better. What did you decide to do that you were going to follow your passion with?
Well, I'm in the process of becoming. So as you can see by the name, it says John Cole artist, right? So really what my passion is to use my creativity, my interest in the arts to not necessarily make money, but to bring joy into other people's lives. That's really what I want to do. Now, behind me here, I don't know if you can see it right here. This is one of my pet portraits, and on my website is I've got a whole bunch of pictures up there of some of these paintings that they do, and they're basically dot paintings. They're like pointillistic style of people's animals.
Oh, that's incredible when you
Um,
that's incredibly that you
Thank
can do
you. But that's just one example. I'm dabbling like in oil painting. That's another thing that I'm very interested in. I've never oil painted before, but I've done some oil paintings. The picture above me, which is cut off because of the cameras and acrylic painting that I did, um, I want to be able to do that. But the limiting factor with me right now, and this is really why, and this really is the subject matter of the speech. This is also one of the things that I'd like to address with people during Behind the Power this year in October, is that codependency piece. Um, Codependency for me has been a problem because what ends up happening with the codependency is that you end up losing the feelings of self-worth, the feeling of self-value. And then as a result of that, the things that you do, if they're good or not, they're not good enough because you don't feel good enough.
Describe codependency for me.
Well, for me, and it can be really defined differently for different people. Okay, the basic understanding of codependency historically has been those folks that have really changed their whole um, selves in order to fulfill the needs of maybe somebody that's chemical dependent, somebody that's an alcoholic. That's really kind of where that whole term came from. So, for example, if you were married to an alcoholic, your whole life now would be, your whole life would be about your partner. So you would take on characteristics perhaps, or you would lose your own identity because this other person has become so time consuming that you would start to identify with the caregiving piece of that, right? For me, it's a little bit different because I didn't come from an alcoholic family. My parents weren't divorced. There wasn't anything there that would be like a red flag for codependency. But the more that I am looking at that problem with myself, and where the codependency for me has shown up is that feeling of self-worth. I have identified as a Coast Guardsman because I have been codependent upon that as my identity.
Aha.
I didn't have my own identity. I was a Coast Guardsman, or I was a husband. I am married for my third time right now. So I've gone through two divorces because I didn't know how to act like me, because as many of us, we were taught to be like our parents. I was taught to be a guy, I was taught to be, just by observation, how to act as a man from somebody that was born in 1919, who fought in World War II, and who was in his 60s when I was in my teens. That's how I learned how to be a man, by observation there, right? So you end up making up these stories about how life is supposed to be, and then when you are finally on your own, you act them out because you don't know any better. And then if you don't course correct that, if you don't pivot that, if you don't have a coach to say, hey, look, there are other ways, or if you're influenced by the outside and you continue those behaviors, you lose your identity, you lose your sense of self. You then see your self-worth, your self-value in the things that you do for other people, right? You end up doing everything for other people. And then when they don't do what you want, or they don't do, or they're not happy with what you do, you take it personally, you internalize it, you get angry. For years, Kevin, I thought I had anger problems, right? Because everybody thought of me as this angry guy, right? There's John the angry guy. But really, the anger was just a side effect of the codependency, because a lot of that was fear-based as well, because I was afraid to fail. Because everything I did, it's like, if I didn't do it perfect, I was going to fail. And if I fail, what are you going to think of me, Kevin? Huh? What are you going to think of me?
I,
You know what I mean?
oh, and absolutely.
Right.
And especially being in a military background,
Yep.
because you're expected to make your bed perfectly. You're expected to do all, when you were on base, and to do, dress impeccably, and to make sure your shoes were polished and all that kind of thing, I would imagine.
Mhm.
And I've never, fortunately, I turned 18 in 1975, and you could not get anybody to go into the military right after
Yeah.
Vietnam.
Yeah. It's a
So
tough period. Yeah.
yeah, so I didn't have that issue, but sadly, I had a bunch of other ones. But so I get that, and so the anger issues presented themselves that way. How long after you recognized that was why you were angry were you able to change that behavior?
Well, I tell you, I didn't know I had a problem until the pieces started to click maybe 6, 7 months ago. And I know it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but things just never clicked. It's like a whole bunch of things just all of a sudden just snapped into place. It's like everything made sense to me. It's like, oh, by heavens, this is exactly what's going on. And during my speech, I kind of talk a little bit about the progression of how I got from point A to point B. And really, the bottom line with this, it's making the decision, which is really easy, right? I made a decision to click a link and connect with you. You made a decision to show up tonight to do this broadcast. It was pretty simple, right? It was a decision you made,
Right.
right? So my decision was, I am worthy. It was that simple. And when you make that decision, everything changes, right? Now, I'm not saying I've solved the problem, because if I had solved the problem, I'd stand up on stage in Atlanta and go, dudes, there ain't nothing going on here, nothing to see here, right? Because you got to remember, I've had this problem for 50 some odd years. So this is a long-term problem that I'm struggling with, right? But I am worthy is very, very powerful. And if you can make the decision to tell yourself and really feel it, that I am worthy, then you can start to really see what value you can bring, to the world. And it really gave me the confidence to start doing that painting right there, right? Because this makes people happy. It brings joy into their lives. And I'm not never going to be rich off of it, but that's not what I want. I don't want to be rich off that. Now, if the universe wants to shower me with money, I'm not going to turn it away. Right. But I want to be able to say, Kevin, here's a painting that I did of your gerbil. And I know you love that gerbil, Kevin. I know you did. Right. I want this to be something that you can remember him by, or her by, right? And that makes you happy, then I feel fulfilled, because that is what I want to be able to do.
And when you operate from that place,
Yep.
you will find that people will give you money to do that, and it will all be in my humble opinion, by divine design, and and because you have your heart in the right place and you're thinking in the right way of it, and just don't preclude the opportunity to that somebody's going to give you money.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I would never turn down a good $20 bill or whatever. It's okay. I'll take it. I'll accept it.
Now I got to ask you though, because you mentioned you referenced it very briefly, that when you were a kid you small in stature,
Yep,
and so you were the picked on kid,
yep.
and that I've had a little bit of that, but I was a bigger guy, and so I could get out of that. I can't imagine how that would impact your life going forward all the way through because of that when you were 6, 7, 8, 9. Or I don't know how old you were, but when you were being picked on the school bus and that kind of stuff, that would also affect you for your whole life, wouldn't it? That's trauma.
It is, and you know, here's this is something I thought about maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, about the inner child. Now I and a couple of us, actually, I think there was maybe 10 or 15 of us had gone down to Florida for the inner child workshop with Allyson. She was hosting it down there. By the way, the Keys, beautiful. If I would move there in a heartbeat if I could, just saying. But we went down there, and one of the things I walked away with from that workshop, and it really was kind of an enlightening experience for me, and that is, when we think of our inner children, right, like the one that was picked on the school bus, you know, that person still exists, Kevin. That little Kevin still is there. I'm looking right at little Kevin right now. That is the same person. That
Yep.
person never went anywhere. The only difference is time,
Yep.
right? So that person that was little John that was picked on the school bus never got over that because there was nobody there to explain that to him, to to talk to him about it, to help him through that trauma. So instead, he just kind of had to deal with it, right? So if I look at it from that perspective, that little boy is still there. I'm right here, right? And that time is the only factor. Then really it's just adult John, who's now a little wiser than he was, talking to little John, who doesn't know any better, and parenting him.
Yeah.
I mean, and it seems really weird. I know if there are people watching this, especially, and again, I'm not picking on men, don't get me wrong, but men don't think like this normally, at least not what I've seen. And if I'm wrong, by all means, somebody correct me here. But men typically don't think like that, right? But the fact is, if we think like that and we can put ourselves into that mindset, it's amazing what we can do because we're really just helping ourselves. It's almost like time traveling in a weird sort of way. We're going back in time to help ourselves through this problem. And then when you fast forward, you really feel a lot better. You know what I mean? You're helping to correct those problems. So in that particular case, I look back on that, and there's nothing I can do to prevent that it happened.
No.
Big me can't go on that school bus right now and beat up this little kid. Number one, I'd probably get arrested, right? So that would be bad. But I certainly can sit him down and I certainly can explain to him that, number one, it wasn't his fault. Number two, yeah, you might be small now, but someday you're going to be talking with Kevin McDonald live on a podcast about this. So there's going to be some value in that experience, right?
Yep.
That you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay, So things like that, I think, are very, very helpful.
And Gretchen Johnson has got something to say to you, sir.
Hi, Gretchen.
And that would be, John, you are doing such a great job. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
And so am I. And by the way, everybody who is listening now and has not signed up to be on my podcast, number one, shame on you. Number two, no, I'm kidding. You're welcome to do that. Just go to Kevin at kmmedia.pro, and I'll send you the link, and you can book yourself onto the show. From now until October, anytime one of Allyson's people would like to come on, you are welcome to do that. We can do multiple visitations and conversations, and we're also going to do it on KKNW, which is the radio show in Seattle that I do 3 days a week, and because I John, this sort of program that Allyson has put together, and God love her for it, it can really, honestly, can change the world if enough people get involved with it and take it for and take it as it's offered, because she is very genuine.
Yeah.
Um, and so go to AllysonRoberts.com, sign up to go to Behind the Power in October. And there's also and I forget, I should have it in my notes in front of me, but the the other program that she does, it's $27. She's doing one of those in August.
Right. It's painless pivots to power.
I couldn't say that to save my life. Painless pivots to power, and it's like nothing. It's $27, and you can have the opportunity to meet with some like-minded people and to really get involved with this, because everybody that I've met, you guys are just phenomenal human beings, and I'm
Thank you.
glad to know you all.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, we really appreciate what you're doing. You're really allowing us to get that message out, to be able to tell our story. And I think those folks that come down to Atlanta in October, they're really, when I went down to Atlanta the last time, I didn't know what to expect, but there's something about how genuine people really are. We don't see how genuine people are on social media. What we're seeing this facade,
Yep.
you know. And when you see people in person, and these are, like you said, like-minded people, and you really hear their stories, and then you meet people that might not be speaking, but that are just attending. And there's it's going to sound really corny, Kevin, because this isn't me, but there really is a very magical thing that happens.
Sure there is.
It's I don't think I've ever been in any kind of, being in the Coast Guard, I've attended many conferences over the years, and I wouldn't dream of walking into a military conference and hugging someone. Right. But you can't help but not in an event like this, because there's this legitimate, genuine desire to be there, for one thing. And then there's this desire to really want to connect. And that connection is so important.
And people legitimately, honestly care about you, care about your outcome, and they want to support you,
Yep.
because everybody that's been there has been wounded. I think everybody on the planet has been wounded at one time or another, and it's people that are willing to get together and say, I hear you. And that's the biggest thing, is that you can sit in a group of I don't know, 6 or 8 of you, of the group that you're with, and you can tell them anything, and they will not think less of you. They will understand, and they'll work you through it, and they'll provide you with guidance and help, or just a nice hug. But either way, you win.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes that's all you really need. And sometimes that's exactly what's needed. Right.
Yes.
So,
So, John, I would like you to take a couple of moments and tell the audience about Allyson, about the program, about yourself, anything that you would like them to know. I'm going to sit over here and shut up.
okay. Well, first, I'll tell you a little bit about the event coming up. We'll just briefly touch on that.
Yeah.
So it's Behind the Power. The website is behindthepowerevent.com. So it's 3 days in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia, at the Hotel Coley. It's October 19th through the 21st. There's going to be 13 speakers over the 3 days. So it's not just my story. It's also 12 other speakers. And I haven't heard the speeches yet, but it's a very wide variety of subjects. And it's not going to be this thing where you're going to go there and it's all these sad stories and stuff like that. These are uplifting stories. All right. So even though there's some trauma involved, what you're really going to get is you're going to hear these powerful stories of folks that really are, they've either overcome them, or they're in the process of, and both are beautiful things. You don't have to be way up here for your story to be powerful. If you're working your way up there and you're trying and you're making progress, that's beautiful. And even if you're willing, Kevin, that's a beautiful thing. So also during the event, there's going to be some panel sessions. I myself have two. I'm going to be on a panel for creating a healing environment at home, because a lot of us struggle with that, especially in home environments. Sometimes family, believe it or not, can be complicated. You can quote me on that. And then the other panel I'm going to be on is embracing vulnerability and authenticity. I don't know. I don't know if everybody's authentic. I like to think I am, but that's a struggle, right? So that's another panel discussion we're going to have. And again, for my breakout session, which folks are invited to, it's going to be a very small group. This one talking about navigating life after a lifetime career. So things that we talked about today, how did I go through that? What was my process? I can give some advice, and it's basically just a discussion. We can talk about, some ideas or some suggestions and things like that. My speech itself, the TED Talk like speech, 15 minutes. And then afterwards we can chat. And then if there's anybody struggling with codependency, what I'd love to do is sit down with you and talk with you and just hear your story, because while I'm not an expert in it, I can certainly lend an ear, and I can certainly give you my perspectives on what I went through in the hopes that maybe that can help you. So, and as far as Allyson goes, she's wonderful. I wouldn't trade her for nothing. And her program, Unapologetic Power, like you'd mentioned, AllysonRoberts.com has all the information that you would need to set up an appointment to talk with her. She's a coach, and just like a football team, just because I like to throw a football doesn't mean that coach is right for me. So there's always an interview process with her, because sometimes people just aren't the right people, and there's nothing wrong with that. No harm, no foul there. But AllysonRoberts.com is where I would go to get more information about her program. I will mention, and I hesitate to bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. There's always money involved with everything. But what I will say about money is that look at it from a compensation point of view. You're compensating people for their time and effort. You're not buying anything. You're not paying for anything. You're compensating them for their time, money, and effort. There's an important distinction there. Very, very important, because the programs, the behind the power, the things that we're all doing takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And in order for us to put something on successfully, we need the support, which is why it costs anything. Otherwise, we would give it away, right? So look at it from that perspective. So we're getting compensated for the effort. Well, I'm not, but there's a compensation piece there. So keep that in perspective. So yeah. How's that?
By the way, a couple things. Have you thought about doing a podcast?
You know what? That thought has crossed my mind a couple times, but yeah, no, I never got that far.
Well, you're certainly welcome to come on mine anytime you want to, and which probably would save you a whole bunch of heartache and stuff, because there's 250,000 podcasts out there. There aren't very many good ones. I would like to think that this is a good one, but somebody's chiming in who's been sneaking around the periphery. He would be great at it, Allyson Roberts says. And
thank you, Allyson.
And thank you for listening, Allyson. I really appreciate you and what you do. I also want to make, you were talking about the money issue. When you go to the conference on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it is breakfast and lunch are taken care of.
Yep.
Each day. At certain levels, there's a cocktail party. There's also a formal dinner. There's also you're staying at the hotel, which is really cool, because you can not only bond during the time that the conference is going on, but you can sit and talk to somebody afterwards that you make a connection with. And so it can become a very, very powerful couple of 3 days. The other thing, which I think is really cool, is that if you're traveling a distance, I'm sending somebody from Seattle, Washington. It doesn't make any sense for her to fly and try and get there by 9 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. So she's flying on Tuesday, and then she's going to stay Friday night after the conference ends. And Allyson has made it possible for us to get 2 extra rooms and it's on her website now, 2 extra rooms for the same rate as the other one. So that you can stay there and it can be comfortable for you, and you don't have to go through a bunch of hoops to get there and stuff. But I would highly recommend that you stay at the hotel, that you have the opportunity to meet with people throughout the evening and stuff, so that, because I think if you're going to spend some money doing anything, you need to get as much value for it as you can, and take advantage of that.
It's Kevin, it's an amazing value. I mean,
Absolutely, absolutely,
it really is. Yeah.
And Allyson just wants to make sure that we remember meditations, classes, and sessions with her are a bonus, so that you get the opportunity to work with her. She is going to, I hope she's taking her, her multivitamin, because she's going to be tired by the end of by Friday at 5 o'clock.
We're all going to be taking our multivitamins, I think.
Yes.
Look at that. Room rate.
Yeah, so she was able to cut a deal for the rooms, and she's passing that along to us, and so that's really good. So, and I can tell you that there are last year she wasn't dead, she was mostly dead. You ever see Princess Bride? He's 95% dead, but he's not all the way dead. But so she worked really hard and stuff, as everybody that supports her will be doing. So, but there are times in your life when you have the opportunity to go do something that you might not otherwise do, that could change the course of your life forever. And take advantage of this, because it won't go away. These people are not going to go away from you. The connections you'll make could become lifelong connections. Has that been your experience, John?
It absolutely has. I think with very few exceptions, those folks that attended last year remain my friends. They've either joined the group or we've stayed connected in some way, shape, or form. It's just been amazing.
I could talk to you all day. I want to honor your time. And we've been talking about an hour, and that's what I promised you. So, but will you come back? Can we do this again before October?
I'd love to. I mean, we never even started talking about ghosts or Bigfoot or anything like that, and I had that written down on my list. So maybe next time.
Well, I'm not real big on them, although I am big on the other side, and how we are all connected.
That would be good.
And how that all works and stuff. By the way, just as an aside, I highly recommend, if you're going to talk about and read about how our lives really work in conjunction with each other and in conjunction with the other side, and after we're gone, go get the book Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton. It is a great book to get, and it really does offer a great explanation of how it all works and how we are all connected and how we all mean something to each other.
That sounds great. And then just one other plug real quick.
Absolutely.
Don't forget Allyson's book, A Spiritual Journeys, available on Amazon.com. Fantastic read. Very, very meaningful book. And then in October, our book, because each of us wrote a chapter, it's going to be called Behind the Power. You're Not Crazy, You're Powerful. That'll be coming out in the fall, just in time for the event. So look for that at Amazon as well.
Let me play this for you, by the way. It's a commercial that we did for Allyson. You tell me what you think. Have you ever said, how did I do this again? Want to create your own powerful life? Well, Allyson Roberts can help resolve the issues that keep repeating by creating a new outcome. She is one of the top 100 coaches in the world and will help you achieve your dreams. Email her at Allyson@AllysonRoberts.com or visit AllysonRoberts.com and receive a free guided meditation and discover all of her ongoing programs and events. Did that play in its entirety?
It played in its entirety, and sign me up, Kevin. I'm sold.
Yep, she is a dynamic person. The first time that she came on the show, we had a wonderful time. We had an instant connection. We talked about her growing up years and all of the stuff that happened in Georgia at that
Yeah.
time, and it makes it, and how tough she had it, and she is now, obviously she's conquered it and has risen above it and is there to help everybody that she comes in contact with. And so
Yep.
I think the world of her, and I know you do, and I know that all the people that are listening today. And thank you, by the way. And if you'd like to find out more about Positive Talk Radio, you can by going to positivetalkradio.net. I've got 190 shows up now, and more to follow. I'm doing like 10 a week, or eight to 10 a week, because I just love doing this. So, but I thank you, John. It's been, and it's if somebody, if would this be okay if there's a guy out there that is looking for somebody to mentor them
Mhm.
and is lost, would you be willing to be that guy?
I absolutely would. Yeah, I would definitely be interested in helping anybody else that needs some help. Yes.
And so, is there a website, or excuse me, is there a email that they can reference, that they could email you and start a dialogue?
Sure. They can go to johncoleartist@gmail.com.
That's easy.
That's
John
easy.
Cole Artist at email, or at gmail.com.
Right.
And if you feel driven, if you feel like that this can help you, if you're feeling lost and you really would like to change the trajectory of your life into something that you'll be proud of, and you'll be happier, by all means, give him an email, and he can work with you. So
Okay.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
It has been, my time this is like going to the playground and playing for me.
I tell you what, the hour went fast. So
It does.
yeah, very
it
fast.
it does. My and I'll put it out there, because with Allyson around, who knows what can be manifested. But my mission in life is, I want to do a syndicated radio show 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, across the country.
Wow. You can do it.
I believe so.
You can. Absolutely.
I believe so. And I just have to make sure I don't run out of life before I get there.
Got
So
plenty.
I know. And so John, thank you so much. And thank you, Allyson. Thank you, everybody who's listening. And we'll see you in October. And we'll see you before then too. So have a great day, everybody. John, if you'll stay right there, I'll be right back. Hey, thanks for enjoying this episode all the way to the end. Please give us a like and subscribe to this channel. This has been a production of positivetalkradio.net. Please visit our website, oddly named positivetalkradio.net, for more details about us and our mission, which is to provide great positive programming designed to inspire us all. I'm Kevin McDonald, and I'm proud of these shows, and I truly hope that you'll like them and share them with friends and family. So on behalf of our entire team, remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we got.